What is up, people? Alex here from Ye Olde Entertainment, and today we're going to be talking about Game of Thrones and Dragon Age. I am going to be comparing the show to the video game because essentially they tell the same story, and I will be telling you why I think Dragon Age told this story better. Now, those of you who say these two products cannot be compared on account of one of them being a video game and the other one a TV show, on account of one of them featuring dwarves, elves, and magic in the form of conjured lightning, fireballs, and force fields, and the other one not having any of this, well, if you're one of those people who says these two products cannot be compared on account of these things, then this video is not for you.
Now, those same people would probably say that James Cameron's Avatar and Disney's Pocahontas are nothing alike, because one of them takes place in a science fiction scenario, and the other one tells a story of a Native American girl who, well, you get the idea, right? So, if you're not one of the aforementioned crowd, bear with me while I pick all the crucial relevant details from these two products of entertainment and tell you why they are alike and how they are different and why Dragon Age did it better. Now, the game and the series may meander into vastly different subplots, they may have vastly different characters, but the big picture and what's truly relevant about the story and the moral of the story is exactly the same. So first we have a power struggle. I will show you this presentation that I have prepared. It's not the prettiest, but I think it'll do. In, let's say, Game of Thrones, this is a very big thing because everyone in the series seems to be all hell-bent on getting their asses on that uncomfy looking chair, and they'll do so by any means necessary. This is admittedly not as important in Dragon Age. It is present, there's a civil war going on, sure, but it mostly boils down to Turn Logain and his daughter Queen Honora and their allies trying to seize power in Ferelden, while the former royalists seek to expose these people, expose their scheming, and sort of get them out of the way or bring them down so that the true threat can be addressed. It's still, however, a big thing that the main group in the story has to overcome. So, then, and this is, I think, the most important thing, there's the group of individuals who have been burdened with the task of saving everyone from the real threat. In Game of Thrones, this group of individuals is known as the Night's Watch, and this is a group of people who take an oath to protect the Seven Kingdoms with their lives against the coming darkness.
My words will bear witness to my vow. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. I shall live and die at my post. I am the sword in the darkness. I am the watcher on the walls. I am the shield that guards the realm of men.
That's pretty much the gist of it. Now, the Seven Kingdoms are, of course, too busy with their own petty disputes for the throne or whatnot, and they stand ignorantly and gravely unaware of the magnitude of what's coming. Brace yourselves and all that, you know? These people are, for the most part, the Night's Watch is, for the most part, not exactly cherished and admired throughout Westeros. They're basically either bastards or heirs
Whose noble fathers want to have nothing to do with,
criminals, etc.
They were given a choice, no doubt. Castration or the wall. Most choose the knife.
So these people are mostly sent to their glorious, veiled, oblivious demise. In Dragon Age, there's also a group of people burdened with this task. This group of people is known as the Grey Wardens. And guess what? They are a group of people who take an oath to protect the unsuspecting idiots in
Ferelden,
with their lives against the coming darkness.
We speak only a few words prior to the joining, but these words have been said since the first. Alistair, if you would.
Join us, brothers and sisters. Join us in the shadows where we stand vigilant. Join us as we carry the duty that cannot be forsworn. And should you perish, know that your sacrifice will not be forgotten, and that one day we shall join you.
Now, these idiots and
Ferelden.
of course, much like the different factions in Game of Thrones, are too busy with their own petty disputes for the crown and whatnot, and they stand ignorantly and gravely unaware of the magnitude of what's coming. The Grey Wardens, although they are a little bit better regarded in Dragon Age than the Night's Watch is in Game of Thrones, they aren't exactly cherished and admired throughout Thedas.
Hardly surprising. The Grey Wardens have ever been a haven for criminals in Maleficar.
They are bastards, they are heirs whom their noble fathers want nothing to do with, criminals, etc.
And a pickpocket, thank you very much.
So, again, they are mostly sent to their glorious field, oblivious demise. I don't know if you've noticed this, but basically in these two last bits that I was talking about, I just changed Westeros for
Ferelden.
the rest is exactly the same. This group of individuals, after a series of circumstances, end up being led by a bastard.
So can we do this? Go to Redcliffe and these other places and build an army? It's always been the Grey Warden's duty to stand against the Blight. And right now, we're the Grey Wardens.
And this bastard turns out to be the rightful heir to the throne.
I bent the knee. I'm not king in the north anymore.
I'm not talking about the king in the north, I'm talking about the king of the bloody Seven Kingdoms.
I told you before how Al Eamon raised me, right? That my mother was a serving girl at the castle and he took me in? The reason he did that was because, well, because my father was King Marek, which made Kaelin my half-brother.
The bastard wants nothing to do with the crown, and he is very insistent about it.
I don't want it.
I'm a commoner, I'm now a Grey Warden, and in no way in line for the throne.
All the time. He is too busy concerning himself with the great battle to come, of course. That's why he wants no place in the struggle for power. That's alien to him. He doesn't like it. He doesn't care about this. And finally, and this is, I think, the most important thing, there's the greater threat that this glorified group of individuals is meant to save the world from. These are basically monsters that are led by a badass uber monster. In Game of Thrones, these are known as the White Walkers, and they are led by the Night King. In Dragon Age, these monsters are known as the Darkspawn, and they are led by the Archdemon. There are, of course, many other similarities that are relevant, maybe not as relevant, but still relevant. For example, the Queen has a father, and this father is the one who's actually pulling the strings of this whole deal. He's the guy who leads her armies. This guy wins, or rather earns, some of his victories at the battlefield, and some of them with the pen, like Tywin Lannister himself says. This guy conspires with his enemy's closest ally to have him betrayed and slain. This happens in both products. Both of these guys, by the way, I mean, the Queen's father, they're known by their initials TL, Tywin Lannister or Tyrion Logain. There's also a witch who knows more than she's letting on, and through some obscure magic brings back the bastard from death or certain death. This is very clear in Game of Thrones. It is rather unclear in Dragon Age. You and the bastard who's the legitimate heir, you were shot down and overrun by Darkspawn, probably died, and then the witch saves you from that. So there's a slight difference, but in the end it's the same. There's also the fact that these monsters are twisted versions of regular mortals who are sent back to these regular mortals to teach them a lesson for their arrogance. That's sort of the justification behind the monsters in Game of Thrones and Dragon Age. There's also the overly smart Kanan companion who tries to warn his master of an incoming threat, and most of the time fails at that, like the Mabari, the protagonist in Dragon Age, and the wolves for the Stark boys in Game of Thrones. There's also stuff like the Silent Sisters. This is a thing in both Game of Thrones and Dragon Age. They're called exactly the same, and they cut their tongues off to show devotion for some higher cause. This is a common thing in both. And there's also a smart-mouthed dwarf who's too fond of drinking.
That's what I do. I drink, and I know things.
I may not know clean from a beggar's ass when it comes to most things, but I don't mess around with my ale.
That's not exactly the same. They're not exactly the same. They don't play the same roles, nor do they have the same personalities. So I guess that's not a thing that we can compare. But we could go on for days. I'm not going to go on for days. I'm just going to cut to the chase here and tell you why I think that Dragon Age is deeply more satisfying, and Game of Thrones turned out to be a monumental disappointment.
Towards the end.
This is my opinion. This is not fact. These are the reasons why, for me, one of these products worked so well to the point that I played the game 12 times, and why Game of Thrones just felt very sour, just left a sour taste in my mouth towards the end. Okay, let's forget for a moment, those of you who know about this, about Campbell's hero's journey, or red herring, or plot armor, or such other literary concepts. They are rightful explanations, I suppose, to some of the stuff that happens in both of these products, but let's forget about that for a moment. Let's focus on the characters, or some of the characters at least. Let's talk about Jon Snow. So Jon Snow is a bastard who right off the bat is removed from anything remotely related to the struggle for power in the Seven Kingdoms. Instead, he's immediately conscripted into the Night's Watch. And throughout the many seasons of the show, Jon has a few run-ins with the Night King. There is this one moment in which he goes to this village and he ends up staring at the Night King in the eye, and the Night King stares back, and
he even has a brief skirmish with one of Night King lieutenants or something.
So we could say that he stared into the eyes of the true threat of this whole business. So he knows what the stakes are. And although maybe he has not lost people to the White Walkers themselves, not that he knows of, he has certainly lost people in this whole conflict against the White Walkers. Hell, he even had to be brought back to life because of this greater purpose that has to do with facing the greater threat. So, although he's pretty useless throughout the series, so eventually Jon Snow manages to rally everyone under his own banner. People from all over Westeros join together and stand in the face of evil. And you know what? At the very climax of the series, at the apex of glorious battle, this man does nothing. He doesn't do anything. Nothing. Zero. Nada. Absolutely nothing. So this character, Arya Stark, is the one who ultimately deals the final blow to the Night King. Arya Stark. Now, Arya Stark, as much as I love the character, is someone who had no bones to pick whatsoever with the White Walkers or the Night King.
What are they like?
Bad. Really bad.
She didn't know about these things the night before the battle. She was asking this and that before the final battle. And she hadn't even seen the fuckers until that day. So Arya Stark, not the poor bastard who had been telling everyone about how these fuckers are gonna fuck everything up.
Your Grace, everyone you know will die before winter's over if we don't defeat the enemy to the north.
This is serious. I wouldn't be here if it weren't.
I don't think it's serious at all. I think it's another bad joke.
And now he has been doing that for years. Not the guy who had to face Stannis because of this, who had to face his own companions for letting in the wildlings. Not the guy who got himself in so much trouble, who had to take all the hard decisions, and even died because of this. No, not that fucker. That was not who dealt the final blow against the Night King. It was Arya. Why Arya?
As this article from Business Insider says, this all brings us to Arya and the Night King. Benioff and Weiss were cornered into finding solutions for character arcs once the show overtook Martin's books. A scenario nobody wanted to happen, nor ever thought would until it did. Fans searching for answers among the shattered pile of glass that was once the White Walkers are only finding misery. Benioff and Weiss looked at the pieces they had on the board and made their choice to, quote-unquote, avoid the expected. Fans had expectations rooted in decades of theory, crafting, and analysis of Martin's work, and feel as if all those layers of true foreshadowing were tossed out the window in favor of a retconning and new meaning into Arya's story. And guys, I happen to totally agree with this article.
Now, if that's not some bullshit explanation, guys, I truly don't know what is. That is some baloney sausage explanation. Now, how did Dragon Age do this? This is a game, of course, and you can play it in various different ways, but there is this sort of canonical way to play it, and if you take certain decisions, this is how it goes in the end. The bastard picks up that large sword and cuts that motherfucker through the belly, and then, much like it happened in Game of Thrones, the rest of the fuckers, they just vanish, or they run away, rather, in this game. It is as simple as that. The guy who fought the Darkspawn time and time again, the guy who had his mentor and his brother killed by the Darkspawn, the guy who survived seemingly unsurmountable odds, the one who cared not the least about the throne because he knew
there was a bigger fish to fry, one that everyone had to concern themselves with.
After all his toil, that was what I was expecting. That was the guy who took the final blow. Yes, that's what I wanted. So it was predictable. So who gives a fuck if it was predictable? At some point, most movies and stories are predictable. When everything is said and done, it's just a matter of how things go down rather than what goes down. It is basically fulfilling the promise of a logical conclusion, I think. I think Game of Thrones had already taken us on a wild enough ride of shifting alliances and plot twists up until that point, and it was the point to say, okay guys, thank you for coming along for the ride, and now we're going to give you the satisfying conclusion. That would have fulfilled the promise. That would have given the character its rightful conclusion. And that is way more important than having someone unexpected kill the Night King for unexpectedness' sake. No, don't give me that. That's a poor reason. That's not how you decide who deals the final blow. That's not it, guys. Now, let's talk about the final stretch of the story. So in Game of Thrones, the good guys, let's refer to Jon Snow, Daenerys, and everyone else who's not Cersei, basically, as the good guys. The good guys defeat the monsters, and it's not over yet. These monsters, although they were introduced as some pretty frightening motherfuckers, who are gonna turn everyone else into zombies. That's the worst fate that you can imagine. Well, once those guys are defeated in a battle that was pretty badass and epic, because you have to give the devil its due, this was awesome, awesomely shot. But no, when these guys are dead, no, it's not over yet. Wait, there's more. So, well, I don't know about you guys, but I have some serious issues with this. It is hinted throughout the series that the greatest threat is that of these mysterious, unknown, badass monsters that will cover the world like a plague of locusts. And that makes perfect sense. Why? Because monsters are the perfect ultimate true villains for a story like the one that is told in Game of Thrones and Dragon Age. Why? Let me tell you why. Games of power between sentient creatures work this way. Let's say someone wants something from someone else, and that someone else doesn't want to do or to give that thing. Bend the knee seems to be the phrase that best exemplifies this in Game of Thrones and Dragon Age. Everything everyone wants everyone else to do seems to be to bend the knee.
It takes no time to bend the knee. Pledge your sword to her cause.
But if the answer to the command, bend the knee, is no, I won't bend the knee,
the Banorn will not bow to you simply because you demand it.
Oh, then we have a power struggle.
Power is a curious thing, my lord. Are you fond of riddles?
Why? Am I about to hear one?
3 great men sit in a room. A king, a priest, and a rich man. Between them stands a common sellsword. Each great man bids the sellsword kill the other 2. Who lives, who dies?
Let's say I want you to bend the knee. Let's say I, Alex, want you to bend the knee. If that's the case, I'm probably going to try one of these things. I may try to use what is known as normative power. And normative power revolves around me trying to convince you to bend the knee. On account of, I don't know, we have many things in common. I'm a really cool dude and you're cool too. And this is going to be organically beneficial for everyone. So on account of the things that we share, maybe religion, maybe a political agenda, maybe, I don't know, a common agenda, I convince you, I apply normative power. Or if I don't think that's gonna work, because maybe we don't have that much in common, or maybe you won't be convinced, then I may use what is known as utilitarian power. So basically that boils down to, if I can't convince you to bend the knee, maybe I can give you a shitload of money, or properties, or I can sex you up. if you know what I mean. But if that fails, then I have Plan Z. I may turn to coercive power, which means that if you don't bend the knee, I'll execute you. Or at least there's the threat that I will execute you. Okay, fine. These are things that happen when there's sentient individuals. This is a sentient power play, whether it's between the Lannisters and the Starks, the Aedukins and the Helmi, whichever faction you want to choose in either Game of Thrones or Dragon Age. And that's why monsters are cool, because they cannot be negotiated with, they cannot be convinced, they cannot be bought, they cannot be threatened, they have to be killed. It's them or us. So normative, utilitarian, coercive powers, those are useless. There is surviving them by killing them. And that's what makes monsters the perfect enemy. And that's why it makes perfect sense for the faction of the protagonist of Game of Thrones or Dragon Age to first go out and do all the power play that needs to be done with all the other opposing factions, and then once everyone is aligned, then you go for the true threat that cannot be overcome otherwise. So first I convince the others, I buy the others, I coerce the others into joining my cause. And once that is done, then we'll see if we can survive this unrelenting mob of monsters that will turn us into zombies.
You would give me a chance for the throne after all this?
I said if I fall, Anora, if I fall, the throne falls to you. I won't kill you while there's a chance that could happen. Somebody has to treat this blight seriously.
That is uncharacteristically wise of you.
Yes, well, don't let it get around. I have a reputation.
And that's why Game of Thrones fails, in my opinion. They do their best case to present Cersei as a monster.
Confess, it felt good. Beating me, starving me, frightening me, humiliating me. You didn't do it because you cared about my atonement. You did it because it felt good. I understand. I do things because they feel good. I drink because it feels good. I killed my husband because it felt good to be rid of him. I fucked my brother because it feels good to feel him inside me. I lie about fucking my brother because it feels good to keep our sons safe from hateful hypocrites. I killed your High Sparrow and all his little sparrows, all his septons, all his scepters, all his filthy soldiers, because it felt good to watch them burn.
Who's not going to yield. They do their best case to present Daenerys as someone who's descending into madness and becoming a mad queen like everyone else in her family. But that case is not strong enough because the stakes will never be as high as defeat the monsters, because the monsters will bring the monstery end of the world in which everyone will be turned into zombies. That's much worse. Under a tyranny, there is still joy to be had. You can still find a reason to live. You can still negotiate. Tyrannies can come to an end. Tyrants can be overthrown. Changes will occur. And that's especially pointed out by Varys, I think, several times during the show. But if everyone is turned into a mindless zombie...
Ninth day she grins and devours her kin. Now she does feast, as she's become the beast. It's what I've seen, what I will become.
There's not a prospect that's more grim than that. There isn't, guys. And that's why it doesn't work. Let's talk about how Dragon Age did this. So the game at some moment reaches an arguably spectacular summit, I think. There's this plot point that takes place at an event called the Lancemeet. In this Lancemeet, again, if you play the game in a certain way, and if you follow the canonical path, so to speak, then the good guys expose Tyrn Logain, which is the Tywin Lannister of Dragon Age, and Queen Anora, who is the Cersei of Dragon Age. And they convince the nobility, which is every other faction, that the Queen and her father must be brought down before the true enemy is faced.
Ferelden is in your hands.
I will. I owe that to Duncan.
And that's how it happens. The queen is defeated, her father is executed. And this is done in a very dramatic fashion. That episode of the Landsmeet is absolutely cool. Everything that you have worked for to survive the plotting and scheming of Turn Loghain and Anora, who are, again, Tywin Lannister and Cersei, their Dragon Age versions, it finally pays off. So once Anora and Turn Loghain are defeated, the bastard, who had never wanted the throne, comes to the realization that that is the only way in which the greatest threat can be defeated.
Put her in the tower for now. If I fall against the Blight, then she can have her throne. If not, then we'll see.
You would give me a chance for the throne after all this?
I said if I fall, Anora. If I fall, the throne falls to you. I won't kill you while there's a chance that could happen. Somebody has to treat this Blight seriously. Everyone, get ready to march! It's going to take all of Ferelden's strength to survive this Blight. But we will face it, and we'll defeat it!
And that's how Ferelden unites under his banner to take the fight to the greater threat, which in this case is the Darkspawn. And that's how you do it, guys.
We have gathered all the forces we can. The Darkspawn horde is sure to reach the capital before us. And so we must race to Denerim as quickly as we can. The lives of many thousands hang in the balance. We must not forsake them. You have gathered an army to replace the one lost at Ostagar, Grey Warden. Let us pray that it will be enough.
Before us stands the might of the Darkspawn horde. Gaze upon them now, but fear them not. The woman you see beside me is an elf, raised to the ranks of the Grey Wardens. And never a more glorious Grey Warden has there been. She has survived despite the odds, and without her none of us would be here. Today, we save Denerim. Today, we avenge the death of my brother, King Cailan. But most of all, today, we show the Grey Wardens that we remember and honor their sacrifice. For Ferelden, for the Grey Wardens!
Dragon Age might have taken more than their fair bit of inspiration from George Martin's original work, but I truly think that Weiss and Benioff, in this last season, the last 2 seasons, they came off as extremely amateurish. And that final stretch, I think they could have learned a thing or two about how to write satisfying conclusions from Dragon Age, which is a game that has been around for 10 years by now. Well, I don't know if you agree with me or not. You probably don't. I don't know how many of you have watched the show and played the games, but I truly believe that the show and the game tell the same story, but Dragon Age tells it better. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Peace out, and enjoy the rest of your week.